Contributions must first be passed by the temple trust and in strict adherence to the laws governing these trusts. Following the circular, the opposition BJP there has stirred the hornet's nest by claiming that the government was seeking to fund some of its election promises, some of its guarantees, because the state did not have money. The state is bankrupt. It doesn't have money to meet those guarantees.
They should see कि किस कॉज के लिए मांगा जा रहा है. अनाथ बच्चों के लिए आप भी आगे बढ़कर आओ. मैं बीजेपी के लोगों से भी आह्वान करती हूँ कि आप भी अच्छे कॉज के लिए इन बच्चों को इनका भविष्य सुधारने के लिए हम सब पार्टी से ऊपर उठकर इन लोगों की मदद करें.
सनातन को गाली देना, सनातन का विरोध करना, लेकिन हिंदू मंदिरों और ट्रस्टों से पैसा लेकर के अपनी योजनाओं को चलाने की बात कह रहे हैं, ये सचमुच में ऐसा एक विचित्र निर्णय सरकार का है.
So this controversy has put the spotlight on the Free the Temples movement. Now, while the opposition to government interference in the management of temples, it dates back several decades, in fact right up to the British rule, the struggle seeking autonomy for temples has been a long one. You name some of the most popular shrines in the country, from the Vaishno Devi temple, the Siddhivinayak temple, the Sai Baba temple, the Puri Jagannath temple, Tirupati temple. They're all just a few examples of temples that are controlled by state endowments departments. The Kashi Vishwanath temple, for example, for a long time now, in fact, the RSS has passed a resolution many years ago demanding that the Kashi Vishwanath temple be returned to Hindus. And then another resolution was passed, first in 1988, then in 2020, the Supreme Court sent a notice to the Uttar Pradesh government in connection with this, the reinstatement of daily religious affairs to be given to a temple trust and freed of the charitable endowments department. In 2021, there was renewed demand for freedom of the temples from government control. The Mahakal temple, for example, in Ujjain, again a very popular shrine, that's not been the focal point so much of the Free the Temple movement campaign, but sporadic calls have been made on local level advocating of the transfer of temple management to an autonomous trust or a priestly body. But as for the Congress, which time and again has been accused by the BJP of running down Hindus and running down Sanatan Dharma, this U-turn in Himachal Pradesh by the Congress government under Chief Minister Sukhu, seeking funds from temple trusts and charitable institutions to meet its promises, to meet welfare schemes, to care for the poor, that is being called out. Now, there is a sequence in which this has happened, because all is not well, certainly with the treasury in Himachal Pradesh. The financial woes of the state are mounting. The government is not able to fulfill its entire welfare obligations. For the last 1 year, the Sukhu government has been in the news for all kinds of debt-related issues and has found unique ways in increasing prices, whether it is hiking prices of necessities, withholding salaries of government employees, even giving up own salaries of elected MLAs and ministers. They even rolled out a toilet tax, which of course the Himachal government then later clarified. The Himachal Bhavan, for example, a prestigious property, was also put up for sale. But the priorities have been rather misplaced. Such an investigation into missing samosas from a government event to a trip to the Maldives. The question is, if there isn't enough money for the state treasury to basically fund basic welfare programs, then it's time to ask some tough questions. So, let me go across to our political spokespersons who are now joining us. Sanju Verma, national spokesperson of the BJP, is joining us. Gokul Butel is principal advisor to the Chief Minister of Himachal Pradesh. Mr. Butel, बहुत धन्यवाद हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए. So, explain the rationale for this, because in September 2024, ration के जो दाम थे, they were increased. In October 2024, the Himachal Pradesh government rolls out a toilet tax, then they climb back on it. November 2024, एक प्रोब ऑर्डर किया गया था टू फाइंड आउट मिसिंग समोसास फ्रॉम सरकारी इवेंट्स. अभी हाल ही में चीफ मिनिस्टर हैड गॉन टू मालदीव्स, अगेन a sort of big controversy around that. The deficit, the outstanding public debt of the state of Himachal Pradesh when Mr. Sukhu took over as chief minister in 2022 end was 37%. Today it stands close to 42.5%. 5.5% का increase हुआ है just in the total public outstanding debt of the state of Himachal Pradesh. और अब आप कह रहे हैं कि temples should fund some of the welfare for destitutes and orphans, etc.
Okay, hi. So I'll start with the first, how you started the show. since the government has been sworn in, for some reason, maybe it is one of the few Congress-ruled states in the northern India. Maybe we feel that the national media is kind of unjust towards us. So I'll just, like today's debate, like you said, that temples have been asked. I would just like to clarify. When Chief Minister took over in 2022, December 2023, Himachal Pradesh Assembly passed a legislation. It was called Himachal Pradesh Sukh, which was passed in 2023 in Himachal Vidhan Sabha for protection of women and especially orphan children. So there are about 4,000 orphan children, and since this scheme has been passed in Vidhan Sabha, there are over 6,000 applications. So I'll just highlight it's one of the first scheme in the whole country, and I don't think so we should look at it from a political standpoint. It's a very human scheme, and it is the first scheme again in the country where children who are in our Sukh, which were the homes for the orphans, they have been upgraded. They have been upgraded to a world-class facility. Children are getting pocket money till the age of 14. They're getting 1,000 rupees as a monthly allowance. 14 to 18, they're getting 2,500 rupees. Until they're 27. Till they're 27, not 18. Most of the states keep it till 18. It's 4,000 rupees.
But Mr. Patel, shouldn't the state fund this money? Why are you asking individual religious charitable trusts to be funding this money?
So there is a religious fund, and I will tell you, before all the 36 temples which come under this trust, before this enactment was made, they could fund, I will repeat, I'm reading the act which is in front of me, they could fund any propagation for Hindu religion and faith. That is where the trust could fund establishment and maintenance of educational institutions. The fund could do that for training of vidyarthis and for securing health, safety, convenience of the disciples and the pilgrims who visit the trust. In the last government, there was an enactment made where it was said that the trust could fund the gaushalas, because they also help in propagation of Hindu religion, and also COVID-19. That time, nobody made a hue and cry, and which I believe is completely fine, since cow is sacred to Hindu religion.
Okay,
it's completely okay. Also, the Chief Minister Relief Fund. This has been since 1985. All the temples could give in the Chief Minister Relief Fund.
Okay, so let me ask Sanju Verma to respond to that. If the same religious entities, these charitable institutions have been asked to fund during COVID-19, asked to fund gaushalas, then why can't they take care of destitute children? Why can't they take care of orphan children?
Let me make one thing very clear. Please don't compare apples with oranges. COVID-19, the worst pandemic in 102 years, was a one-off case. It was a black swan event. For somebody to sit here and generalize what happened in 2020 and 2021 with what is happening in 2025, that defies logic. But let me get straight to the brass tacks. The most important point is this. Himachal Pradesh overall economy is barely 2 lakh crore. And Anurag Thakur is on record, and rightfully so, in saying that in the last 18 months alone, 30,000 crores worth of loans have been taken. This is more than the combined amount of loans taken by any previous dispensation in the previous 60 years, in the previous 6 decades. So the first point I want to make is that Himachal Pradesh's economy is not just in dire straits. It is on the edge of a precipice. It is actually into the throes of bankruptcy. The second point is, as you very rightly said in your introduction, there are 2 P's which are very important. A sense of proportion and priorities. Look at the priority of Sukhwinder Singh Sukhu. On the 20th of February, he, along with his spouse Kamlesh Sukhu, who's also an MLA from Dera constituency, they went on a vacation to Maldives. When the state is actually bleeding financially. In October 2024, there was this famous samosa controversy. Mukhyamantri ke samosa kisne khaye, uske upar ek CID inquiry bitha di gayi. It is, laughable at one point, and it is also extremely unfortunate at another level. And then in November 2024, you had that famous toilet tax. The number of toilet seats you have, taxes will be levied based on that, though of course later on it was revoked because of media brouhaha. But my point is this, and let's get down to the basic fact, Zaka. Today there are more than 2,000 temples in Himachal Pradesh. Not every temple, Himachal Pradesh is called Dev Bhumi, the land of gods. You have some famous temples like Naina Devi in Bilaspur, Kangra Devi temple, Jwalamukhi temple, Chaurasi temple, Chatari temple, Kangra Devi temple. Some of these temples are very rich. Their treasuries are brimming. There's no denying that. But out of these 2,000 temples, there are many small temples in the rural hinterland of Himachal Pradesh. I was looking at some data and I found that 72% of the smaller and mid-sized temples don't even give their pujaris the promised 3,000 rupee per month honorarium. What do you get in 3,000 rupees a month these days? And 86% of the smaller temples in the hinterland of Himachal Pradesh.
No, but Sanju Verma, Mr. Butel just clarified, it's not all the temples of the state. There are only 36 temples that are part of this act. And this act was passed in the previous government. That's his contention.
I'm sorry to say, I think she's missing the
no,
context.
Let me finish. I did not heckle you. Can I please complete what I was saying?
Let her finish.
Yes. The point is not about 36 temples or 56 temples or 1,000 temples out of the 2,000 temples who have to mandatorily give money to the state. My simple logic is this. You promised honorarium of 3,000 rupees to temple pujaris. You did not fulfill that. The Modi government, when there was landslide last year, gave you 1,220 crores. You have not till date given an explanation as to what you did with that money. You were given 500 crores to set up a university in Dharamshala. You spent 200 crores and pocketed the balance 300 crores. So my logic is, what are you doing with the funds that the central government is giving you in good faith?
Can I ask Mr. Butel, the total outstanding liabilities of the state is 94,000 crores, which is 44.2% of the GSDP of the state. Just the net interest payment that you have to pay every year is 5,465 crores. The state treasury is broke, which is why you are now having to ask temples and religious institutions to fund what would be basic welfare. I mean, these are orphanages that are run by the state, right? Why should religious institutions fund those orphanages?
Okay, let me first answer what my colleague from the BJP said. I think she's not aware of the context. Only 36 temples, the smaller temples she is talking about. Ma'am, do not interrupt. I didn't interrupt you. Let me complete.
No, I will interrupt if you make
No, please. I did not. Let's have a civilized debate.
One at a time, please. One at a time. Mr. Butel, So, Mr. Butel.
Only 30 seats. This notification has been given. I don't know if you could pull up the notification. I could share it with you. Number one, this clearly mentioned that whichever temple wants to donate, they could. There's an act which is empowering them, and it just says they may. If the temple trust wants, they may. And the notification itself says that every such proposal must be passed by the temple trust in the meeting first. So if the temple trust wants to donate to the children, they can, number one. Number two, also, it has to be passed by the concerned DC has to be there. So I was interrupted last time. I'm telling you, right now, temples can donate in CM Relief Fund. They could also, there was the Apda Relief Fund, which was formed after the recent tragedy that happened in Himachal. She's telling about 1,200 crores. The government of India itself says that over 30,000 crores destruction happened. What 1,200 crores they're talking about? We don't know about that. They said whatever money you've been getting in disaster, the PM calls Himachal his second house. There has been no reliefs. You know what happened in Uttarakhand when Uttarakhand disaster happened.
Okay.
And also, my friend, I would like to point out again why our loan taking ability has been stopped. When Mr. Jairam Thakur left the government, there was 80,000 crore rupees loan on Himachal government for a 75 lakh population. 80,000 crore rupees.
Okay. Sanju Verma, final word. I need to move to the next segment after this. Yeah. Final word. The act was passed in the previous government.
Can I please finish? Yeah. Zaka, let me first, call out the bluff of this gentleman from the Congress. Be it Prime Minister's Relief Fund, be it, the PM Fund which was set up during COVID, or the State Disaster Response Fund, or for that matter, the GST devolution to states. Himachal Pradesh along with Karnataka have been the biggest beneficiaries, and the reason why RBI stopped giving loans to the Sukhu government is because you have not been able to meet any of the benchmarks in terms of fiscal prudence and financial propriety. And let me tell you one more thing, be it Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, be it Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, be it Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana or Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, the biggest beneficiary is Himachal Pradesh, thanks to Prime Minister Modi in the true spirit of cooperative federalism. So you are the last person who should be saying Himachal Pradesh has been given a step.
I want to move on to the next segment. Sanju Verma will continue to stay on for that. Thank you very much, Mr. Butel. From north, I want to shift focus to the south, where the fight over funds, then there was a delimitation debate, then this whole business about three-language formula, two-language formula, the face-off over the national education policy, and now it's become a Hindi imposition row. Centre versus Tamil Nadu government fight is only intensifying with each passing day. But today, the Chief Minister, Mr. Stalin, took it up a notch by blaming Hindi for the weakening of several other languages across North India. And if this was his bid to try and raise objection against the contentious national education policy too, it did seem quite unwarranted. Mr. Stalin put out a tweet. It was a video where he claimed that many languages, dialects like Bhojpuri, Maithili, Kumaoni, Garhwali, etc. have been underplayed or at least been sacrificed at the altar of Hindi. He says the same will happen with the southern Indian languages, including Tamil. Let's listen into that and then we'll go across to our guests.
மொழி போரையும் தன்னுடைய உரிமை பிரச்சனையான தொகுதி மறுசீரமைப்பையும் எதிர்கொண்டிருக்கு. இதனுடைய உண்மையான நோக்கத்தை நீங்கள் மக்களிடம் கொண்டு சேர்க்க கேட்டுக்கிறேன். தொகுதி மறுசீரமைப்பு என்பது நம்ம மாநிலத்தோட சுயமரியாதை, சமூக நீதி, நம்ம சமூக நல திட்டங்களை பெரிதும் பாதிக்கும். இதை நீங்கள் மக்களிடம் கொண்டு செல்ல வேண்டும். ஒவ்வொருவரும் மாநிலம் காக்க எழுந்து நிற்க வேண்டும். இந்தியாவுக்கே வழிகாட்டியா நாம போராட்டத்தை தொடங்கணும். இப்போ கர்நாடகா, பஞ்சாப், தெலுங்கானா போன்ற மாநிலங்களிலிருந்து நமக்கான ஆதரவு குரல் வந்திருக்கு.
So in his attempt to attack the centre, Stalin is now saying stop Hindi imposition. His contention is that Hindi is the language that has swallowed other North Indian languages / dialects, Maithili, Awadhi, Bundeli, Magadhi, Chhattisgarhi, Santhali, etc. He says that these were swallowed by the language Hindi. Now there are people on Twitter who are saying that Tamil too has swallowed various dialects like Irula, Toda, Kurumba, Kota, Badaga, etc. Or that Kannada swallowed Tulu and Kodava languages, or that Telugu swallowed the Pattapu, Konda and the Gondi languages, or did Malayalam swallow the Kumbaran, Paliyan and Malasar languages. So this idea that one dominant language is sort of swallowing smaller dialects, that applies as much to the southern Indian languages as it applies to Hindi. Now, in the opposition to the national education policy, is it more political than anything else? Because at the end of the day, the NEP was introduced in 2020. Why is this hue and cry being raised now? Dravidian parties claim that NEP imposes Hindi on students, and that is something that they will not stand for. The NEP, though, does not specifically say that Hindi has to be part of the three-language policy. It only says 2 native Indian languages, and obviously the third would be English. The DMK and other Dravidian parties say that the NEP infringes on the state's autonomy. Education, they say, is a matter in the concurrent list, so they get to decide which languages will be taught in state-run, state-funded schools. The fact is, the policy also allows the states to customize the implementation based on their needs. Like I said, 2 native Indian languages. The three-language policy is also seen as a burden on school kids by the DMK, which is why they want to stick to the 2-language policy. But the centre maintains that this policy and its restructuring allows for greater flexibility. Sanju Verma continues to be with us, national spokesperson of the BJP. Dr. Syed Hafiz is spokesperson of the DMK, is now joining us. Dr. Hafiz, let me ask you, no other state in the country has not implemented the three-language formula, either in full measure or in partial measure. The only state that has refused to implement the three-language formula is the state of Tamil Nadu. Why?
The history of Tamil Nadu is such that we have faced Hindi agitation in the past. 2, we don't find any reason to accept a three-language policy. If it is about improving the educational status, I think Tamil Nadu doesn't need anything more from what it is doing now. It is with the 2-language formula. We have been successful by the parameters given by your own government, let it be the school education or the gross enrollment ratio. We are happy, we are successful. in terms of the educational parameters, in terms of human development indices. Why do you want to come in and meddle with an already successful formula? That is our primary thing. And when you said that NEP has been there from 2020, why are we opposing it now? No, it is wrong. We have been opposing it for last 4 years. It is only now after the statement of Devendra, the Union Education
Pradhan,
Minister, the issue became, Mr. Pradhan, it became critical. So right from the day when we have been opposing NEP and the three language formula, it is because of the policy that the state has adopted. And it is not only the DMK. DMK is leading the charge against the union government, but people from the BJP alliance, quote unquote, PMK, is also opposing. They are believed to be an ally of the BJP. So it is not a matter of politics. It is a matter of real issues.
Now, the contention that the contention that Mr. Stalin put forth that Hindi has subsumed other local dialects in northern India. Sanju Verma, at the time of the first census in 1951, when the total population was approximately 360 million, there were 97 million people who identified themselves as Hindi speakers. That's about 27% of the population. In 2011, the last census, that proportion went up to 40.22%. The contention by the Dravidian parties, and particularly the DMK, is this 13% increase has been at the cost, proportionally, has been at the cost of other local dialects in northern India like Maithili, Awadhi, Bhojpuri, etc.
You know, Zaka, let me make one thing very clear. Stalin is a known, publicly documented Hindu-phobic politician. So Hindu-phobia and Hindi-phobia are in the very DNA of the DMK, but I will give out some hard facts. First and foremost, NEP 2020, what does it say? It says mandatorily till class 5 and preferably till class 8. 3 languages have to be taught. 1 is English and 2 are native languages, including a regional language. Does NEP 2020 even mention Hindi as part of the 3 language formula? No. So Stalin and the entire DMK cabal is crying wolf. You know, इसे कहते हैं कि हुआ कुछ नहीं पर आपने रोना धोना शुरू कर दिया. The second point, you know, in 1976 we had the 42nd amendment of the constitution, by virtue of which education was moved from the state list to the concurrent list. We all know that. But if you look at past convention of so many decades, whenever there's a dispute between the center and the state, particularly in matters pertaining to education, it is the writ of the center that has largely prevailed. And point number 3, which is the most important point, I tell everybody, please go and read this article again and again and again, so that you are not, held ransom to any form of misinformation and disinformation. Article 343 of the Constitution clearly says, Hindi is not our Rashtra Bhasha. Hindi is not our state language, but Hindi is our Raj Bhasha. Hindi is the official language of the Indian Union. It goes so much as saying that Hindi in Devanagari script is the official language of the Indian Union. And my final point to everybody who says, oh, we are big believers of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. We are people who believe in the Constitution. 20 seconds. This is what Baba Saheb Ambedkar said. Since Indians wish to unite and develop a common culture, it is the bounden duty of all Indians to own up Hindi as their language. Without this, we would be left as 100% Maharashtrian, 100% Tamil, or 100% Gujarati, but never a truly Indian union. This is Baba Saheb Ambedkar.
So,
I rest my case.
Let the DMK spokesperson respond to it. Mr. Hafiz, yes.
I say there are 3 languages in NEP. The BJP has been time and again saying this for last 10 days. I am giving you a fact where 34 KV schools in Tamil Nadu, run by the union government, there are 0 Tamil teachers. That is a fact. And what are you talking about? NEP does not talk about Hindi or Sanskrit. The second official language in Kendra Vidyalaya schools in Tamil Nadu is Hindi, and the third is Sanskrit. Tamil is nowhere in Tamil Nadu. That is a fact. That is the reality in today's world. You are talking about no other language will not be affected. You have to answer why that is the case. And you know what it says? To learn Tamil as a language, there should be minimum of 20 students coming together. You need a quorum to learn Tamil in
but Mr. Dr. Hafiz, no, there are CBSE schools, there are ICSE schools which are following the 3 language formula, where Tamil is not one of the 3 languages. It's happening in Chennai, it's happening in major cities across across Tamil Nadu and has been happening for a number of years now. It's not a new thing.
Zaka, that's not a policy that is forced on you. That's not a policy forced on a state government to decide. If you don't accept that, you will be not getting the funds. So
Okay.
it is not an imposition.
So
That is a choice.
the moot
You
point,
understood
Sanju Verma,
people
is
want
how
to
can
join
the
that.
centre withhold funds? Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan funds were withheld by the centre, saying unless you implement three-language formula, we will not release the funds to you. This is what they are saying, that this is high-handedness by the centre. Final word. I have to move on after this. Yes, Sanju Verma, please. Only Sanju Verma. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Zaka. Let me just say one more thing. If you are accepting NEP and the three-language formula, you can teach in schools English, and along with that Tamil or Malayalam, English, and along with that Gujarati and Tamil, English, and along with that Tamil and Konkani, English, and with that Tamil or Marathi, English, and with that Tamil or Sanskrit. So let me tell you that crying wolf and playing the victim card is not going to work. Zaka, you work in a professional organization. You suddenly decide one fine day, मुझे काम पर आना नहीं है, पर मुझे अपनी पूरी तनख्वाह चाहिए. It doesn't work that way. Even I am in a political party, I don't draw a salary, but there are rules by which I have to measure up to. You cannot be a law unto yourself. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. हम NEP follow नहीं करेंगे, हम NEP नहीं implement करेंगे. हमको जो मन करता है हम वही करेंगे, but center से हम funds demand करेंगे. आपकी मनमानी नहीं चलेगी.
Okay.
Article 343.
Okay, I got to move on. I'm not sure the salary analogy exactly works. I mean, it's a fund. Of course, taxes are collected by central taxes as well as state taxes. It goes to the consolidated fund. These are grants and funds that are allocated in the union budget for various departments and meant for the states. Of course, you can't have a state hijacking it and saying that we will not implement a particular policy and therefore you should continue giving us funds. That's a valid point. But to say that it's a salary, I'm not sure that that's an accurate analogy. But be that as it may, I want to move on to the next segment quickly here on Brass Tacks. A big development today. The European Union's top leadership, the entire College of Commissioners of the European Commission, led by the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, was in Delhi today with the aim to strengthening commercial and diplomatic ties. Remember, the entire world is sort of wary about Mr. Trump and the Trump tariffs, which are all looming on the horizon. Some would kick in March, some would kick in April. The EU President, Ursula von der Leyen, and 22 out of 27 college commissioners of the European Commission were today in Delhi engaging in high-level discussions with Prime Minister Modi, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. They've announced at the end of it a big boost to the partnership between India and the European Union. India and the EU have agreed to finalize a long-pending trade agreement by the end of this year. And the reason why India is really pushing for FTAs, whether it's with the EU, a bilateral trade agreement with the United States, other free trade agreements, the one with Britain, etc., is because of this looming fear of the Trump tariff. There will be enhanced cooperation in sectors like trade, technology, green energy, connectivity and defense. Highlighting India-EU strategic partnership is a natural one, and at its core is trust and shared belief in democratic values. Prime Minister Modi also announced that there will be increased focus on the India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor, IMEC, which was announced on the sidelines of the G20 summit, which India hosted a couple of years ago.
भारत और ईयू की 2 दशकों की स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप नेचुरल है, ऑर्गेनिक है. बायलैटरल फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट को, एफटीए को, इस वर्ष के अंत तक संपन्न करने का निर्देश दिया है. ट्रेड, टेक्नोलॉजी, इन्वेस्टमेंट, इनोवेशन, ग्रीन ग्रोथ, सिक्योरिटी, स्किलिंग और मोबिलिटी पर सहयोग का एक ब्लूप्रिंट तैयार किया गया है.
India is a like-minded friend. We are the 2 largest democracies in the world. We will work together on economic growth. The potential is immense. Now is the time to step up our security and defense cooperation on land, at sea and in space, so we both, India and the European Union, can be partner in this topic.
But there's more to this. Ursula von der Leyen's visit comes against the backdrop of U.S. President Donald Trump appending what has been a traditionally close tie between the United States and its European partners through NATO. And that has left the European Union on the lookout for new allies. India happens to be just the right fit. Here's why the Delhi visit is significant for the European Union. This visit by Ursula von der Leyen and 22 out of the 27 European College Commissioners, it's the latest effort to reduce Europe's dependency on the United States, particularly since Trump's return to the White House. The European Union is looking to emerge as a stable global partner for business, and it's looking for other partners, India being foremost amongst it. It is also looking to rebuild renewed reliance on trusted allies, given that the traditional alliance in NATO, the transatlantic alliance, has been broken because of Trump. Now, in a few hours from now, the United States and Ukraine will sign what is touted to be the largest minerals deal in the world. It is expected to be worth over $1 trillion. They have agreed on the terms of a draft deal. What does this deal offer? There was talk about $500 billion upfront in future revenues. There was talk about 50% of all future revenues going into a fund that the U.S. will control. But at the end of the day, what Mr. Trump is presenting this as is reparations for the American people, the American public, for the $100+ billion that the United States has given to Ukraine since the war with Russia began 3 years ago. Here's all about the minerals deal. The draft of the minerals agreement between the United States and Ukraine includes a demand that Ukraine commit itself to giving the US $500 billion in revenue that is generated from natural resources, including oil and gas and minerals. The White House has described this request as compensation for American military aid, but Ukraine has been defiant, saying that would create a huge financial burden for future generations. In fact, the Kiel Institute estimates that since the war began 3 years ago, the United States has given close to $120 billion in military and non-military assistance to Ukraine. Trump now wants some of that money back. Under the terms of the draft agreement, Ukraine would have to relinquish half of the revenues from any future monetization of its natural resources, which means 50% of any monies that Ukraine hopes to get out of the extraction of these natural resources will go to the United States. The revenues would be directed to a fund in which the United States would hold the maximum percentage of financial interest that is allowed under US law. The White House has argued that the mere presence of American economic interests in Ukraine would deter future Russian aggression. The White House insists that there doesn't need to be specific security guarantees spelled out in the deal. Kiev estimates that about 5% of the world's critical raw materials are in Ukraine. This includes about 19 million tons of proven reserves of graphite, which the Ukrainian Geological Survey says makes the country one of the top 5 leading reserves for the supply of graphite. Graphite is used to make batteries for electric vehicles. Ukraine also has a third of all European lithium deposits, the key component in making batteries. And prior to the Russian invasion, Ukraine's global share of titanium production, which is a lightweight metal that is used in the construction of aeroplanes and power stations, was about 7% of all global reserves. Further, Ukraine has significant deposits of rare earth metals. These are a group of 17 elements that are used to produce weapons, wind turbines, electronic devices, all of which are vital in the modern world. The United States is keen on a deal for Ukraine's mineral resources because it wants to reduce dependency on China. China controls 75% of all the rare earth deposits in the world, according to the Geological Investment Group. So in a few hours' time, President Zelensky of Ukraine and President Trump will be meeting at the White House. The big minerals deal is being touted as a game changer. Remember, this is coming in the backdrop of the first ever high-level contacts between the United States and Russia since this war began. And President Trump seems to be in a hurry to try and put an end to this war in Ukraine. It's been 3 years since this war began. Let's try and go across to one of the foremost scholars of Russia and Russian affairs. Dr. Leon Aaron is Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Thank you very much, Dr. Aaron, for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. I want to start off by asking you about the minerals deal because a lot is being talked about it. Certainly the White House seems to be playing it up. President Trump himself seems to be playing it up. What do we know about the broad contours of what's there in that deal and what will be signed between both President Trump and President Zelensky in a few hours' time?
This is one of the Trump mysteries. It's a bit of an obsession. And frankly, if you look at the broader context, it's putting the cart before the horse very far ahead of the horse. And the problem here is that, of course, those minerals don't grow on trees and they don't lie on the surface. And to get to them, you need to spend billions of dollars. But remember, they are in a country that is still at war. We also know that 40% of those minerals are in the occupied Russian territories. So does President Trump believe that Russia is going to give up Donbass, Zaporizhia, and other areas where those metals are? Or is he going to go to Russia? Now, Putin, of course, being very alert, jumped on that bandwagon, and he said, oh yes, we also have them. But so far, in Russian total exports, rare earth metals are 1/10 of 1%. So on top of that, as we know, the latest update, President Trump would not give security guarantees. So what kind of Western company is going to go and spend billions of dollars in a country that is, or commit to spending billions of dollars in a country that is still in war and for which the American president would not give security guarantees? So it is a bit bizarre, and we have not seen the details either.
So help us try and understand what is in it then for Trump to be so obsessed about this minerals deal. Of course, everybody agrees the big picture, the meta picture is, the wars of the future are going to be fought for these rare earth metals, these rare earth minerals. China apparently has a lot of them. So the meta picture seems to be that that's where Trump is coming from. But without these security guarantees and some of these really bizarre conditions that were part of the draft deal, which is being sort of circulated, $500 billion of revenue, 50% of all future revenue to go into a fund that the U.S. will manage. What's in it for Trump? And more importantly, what's in it for Zelensky? Why is he agreeing to sign the deal then?
Well, I have no connections at all, inside connections to this administration, never had. But my guess is that this is for domestic purposes. Trump put this war in a context of protecting American taxpayer, which of course, again, very strange because if this peace deal is bad or does not hold, the U.S. is going to spend trillions of dollars, presumably trying to help to protect Europe, although we can talk about that later. It's for domestic purposes. Here I am. By the way, he completely exaggerated. The U.S. spent at best $120 billion, never close to $500 billion. We are going to get to the American taxpayer whatever was spent by the previous quote unquote bad administration on this war, which he says would not have happened if I were in the White House. So it's symbolic. I think it's solely for domestic purposes, given how hazy everything else is. Now, for Zelensky, I think it's easier to understand. Essentially, Trump is holding the deal over Kiev, over Ukraine, as a condition for continuing, although again, we don't know that yet, presumably continuing the assistance, both financial and most importantly military, because the Europe could step into financial assistance, nowhere near in terms of providing military hardware.
So break that down for us. So like you said, and this is I think the Kiel Institute's figure as well, that $120 billion have been spent by the U.S., of which more than $65 billion are military assistance. The U.S. has given all kinds of military equipment to Ukraine. If Trump decides tomorrow, and with him you never know, but if he decides tomorrow that, look, we're going to pull the plug on the funding, we're not going to fund Ukraine anymore, certainly the military part, can Ukraine continue to fight? Can Europe step up and meet that void?
the the best estimate by the military experts I trust is that, and in fact, Ukraine said it. One of the advisors to Zelensky said it. Probably at best to the first half of this year. After that, they run out of missiles for their probably most effective weapon, which is a longer range missiles. Probably will start running out of artillery shells, and even though they appear to be sufficient now in their homemade drones, the connection systems, the very complicated and delicate guiding systems that the U.S. supplied may also be in short order. So it could be rather dire.
So one of the contentions has always been, and Zelensky has been stressing on this, is the security guarantee. And understandably, from his point of view, you don't want to enable Putin to repeat what he did in 14 or in 22, to do it again, for him to feel emboldened. So that security guarantee is understandable. Trump has been repeating, and I think he did yesterday when he met the British Prime Minister as well, the very fact that we are in there, that is, American companies are in there, nobody will mess with us. That is a good enough security guarantee. Do you buy that? And what are the pitfalls in that strategy, if at all?
Not at all. Not at all. In fact, he refused it so far 3 times. Maybe it's a magic number. He refused it originally when Zelensky said, we cannot accept this deal without security guarantees. He refused to provide security force when he spoke to French President Macron, and he refused it again when he spoke to the British Prime Minister. But this is a vicious circle. What American company is going to go in Ukraine, whether in the occupied part or unoccupied part, without security guarantees from the United States? I mean, as I said, before they get to the first deposit of rare earth metals, they would have to put upfront billions of dollars. So Trump knows this. And so my hope, and of course, he's already preemptively conceded so much to Russia, and we can talk about it if we have time, that this is one stick, not a carrot. He already dispensed with quite a few carrots for Putin. One stick that he holds over Putin. In other words, what I will provide the security guarantees, or maybe not provide security guarantees. But what could you give me to that? What could you give me in exchange for my not providing security guarantees? But again, it's a very odd way to negotiate.
But what can Putin give him?
Huh?
What can Putin give him if Trump makes good on his word that he's not going to give security guarantees to you?
Well, you know, Putin, being very astute, have pocketed all those preemptive concessions that Trump gave him, and now apparently he unearthed from a long moldy box the so-called Istanbul Agreement guarantees, which were concluded or negotiated while Ukraine was in terrible strait, literally months after the Russian invasion in 2014. And it includes essentially limited sovereignty for Ukraine. Ukraine essentially would have to disarm. Russia would have the veto over Ukraine's foreign policy, in effect, and Russia holds on to all the territory that it seized. So given all of that, presumably, I assume that Trump could probably say, well, how about one of those conditions? How about I have security guarantees, but solely for the peacekeeping force. You, in exchange, maybe negotiate with Ukraine and make a compromise on some of the territories that you seized. I'm just throwing this out, but this is one of the things that I hope for, because so far it was not a negotiation; it was the terms of Ukraine's surrender.
But tell me this, Dr. Aaron. Does this whole peacekeeping force, European or international peacekeeping force, do you reckon that Russia or Putin would agree to that? And do you see an international peacekeeping force being able to go into Ukraine and keep the peace?
You have two different questions with two different answers. Putin already said casually, it's nothing on paper, that yes, he will tolerate a peacekeeping force. Whether it will hold, look, what French, Danish, I don't know, Italian president or prime minister would agree to their soldiers being killed in Ukraine if Russia decides to resume its aggression? I think the general, of course, I don't think we have specifically EU peacekeeping forces, but the general record of UN peacekeeping forces is very bad. Everywhere, I mean, you take Kosovo, the war in Yugoslavia, you take the Middle East, they either, at the first shot, they either run away or they just let the aggressor through. Aggressor said, we'll not touch you if you let us through. So I think without US, as what Prime Minister of Britain called it, backstop, it's a dead letter.
So as we come to the concluding part, what are the broad contours you think this peace agreement or this ceasefire agreement is going to take shape in the form of? So clearly Ukraine will lose about 20% of its territory. Ukraine can forget about NATO membership. I think Trump reiterated that yesterday or the day before. That's in his worldview, in his mind, that's probably what started the war. And Ukraine gets no security guarantees either.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So this is the broad contour?
This is, as I said, this is a very strange way to go into negotiations. This is already, like I said, if you want to negotiate the terms of Ukraine's defeat, the terms of Ukraine's surrender, that you just listed them. In other words, what does Ukraine get out of so-called peace agreement? I mean, they're already there. Russia already controls this. They're not members of NATO. There are no security guarantees. What's there to negotiate? I mean, the scary part of this whole peace negotiation, when Putin and Trump meet, Putin would say, "Done. Look, this box is checked. This box is checked. This box is checked. Really, let's go have a cup of coffee." I mean, what is there to negotiate? Now, everybody, I think, in the back of their mind, the desperate hope is this is so-called master of the deal, grandmaster of the deal, Trump. And frankly, you can't put it past Trump to say, oh, no, this is all for public consumption. Let's start from the clean sheet. Let's start from the clean list and page. Vladimir, forget about all of this. Well, at that point, Putin could get up and leave. One thing we always have to keep in mind, Putin is going there not for peace, but for victory. And to the extent that he's going to conclude any ceasefire, it's only if it guarantees him a victory that he could sell at home. This is going to be a very strange, very tough, bizarre negotiation.
All right, and a final word, again, meta picture. Trump, wants Russia back in the G7. Trump feels that, for 20, 30 years after the end of the Cold War, there was this whole myth-making about Russia being the enemy and wanting to crush Russia, so on and so forth. What's he getting at? Is he trying to get at that it's possible for the United States and Russia to have a normal relationship?
Look, during the Cold War, the U.S. had more or less, I wouldn't call it normal, defined relationship with mutual obligations with a totalitarian state, the Soviet Union. Putin is reviving, if not the totalitarian, that strongly authoritarian state, aggressive, imperialist, and the one that's not. He always says, we're not satisfied with the current condition of the world. We're not satisfied. We need a multipolar world, which, of course, is what China, his best friends, want as well. So the question is, what it is that Trump hopes to get out of this relationship. I mean, we can go back to the Cold War and say we're not going to nuke each other, which was the essence of our relationship with. But I don't think that's what Putin wants. I think Putin wants a significant revision of the post-Cold War world. And how Trump is going to resist that is a big question.
Okay, Dr. Leon Aaron from the American Enterprise Institute, thank you very much for joining us and for your perspective. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
So Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Washington today. He will be meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump. Julia Benbrook from CNN is joining us live from the White House, where this high-stakes meeting is going to take place in a matter of a few hours. Julia, what can we expect from today's meeting?
Well, we do expect Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to be here at the White House in just a matter of hours to sit down for critical talks with President Donald Trump. And at the center of these meetings is going to be a discussion around a natural resources agreement that would potentially give access to the United States to Ukraine's rare earth minerals, as well as oil and gas. Now, Trump and Zelensky are expected to sit down for a bilateral meeting and then host a press conference following that. So we may hear from them both at the beginning of that meeting and then after the meeting as well. Now, Zelensky is here in hopes, in part, to get some security guarantees from the United States. But that is something that Trump has actually said, he's actually dismissed the idea of robust security guarantees. And this is the third European leader to visit the White House just this week. We saw French President Emmanuel Macron here on Monday, and then British Prime Minister Keir Starmer was here on Thursday. And both of those leaders stressed the importance of those security guarantees for Ukraine in order to ensure that Russia keeps its promises if there is a peace agreement. According to a senior White House administration official, this deal that we expect both Trump and Zelensky to sign sometime today does not include explicit security guarantees for Ukraine.
So at a time when, relations between these two gentlemen, Presidents Trump and Zelensky, is not exactly cordial. Trump had earlier called Zelensky a dictator, somebody who's refusing to hold elections, etc. And in fact even blamed Ukraine for starting this war and not Russia. Why is there so much hype around this minerals deal? Why is the White House saying that this is going to be a game changer?
Well, this is the first time that we have seen these two leaders meet face-to-face since Trump took office. And as you mentioned, there's been a lot of back and forth, a lot of public back and forth between them since then. Trump has been accused of repeating Russian talking points, including falsely suggesting that Ukraine started the war around the time of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And Zelensky has said that Trump is in a disinformation space. Now, Trump actually went as far as to call Zelensky a, quote, dictator. That's a comment that he seemed to kind of walk back yesterday when he was speaking to reporters in the Oval Office. He joked with them saying, "Did I say that?" He has, though, softened his tone about Zelensky prior to this White House visit, saying that he has a lot of respect for the Ukrainian leader. In recent weeks, the Trump administration has said that it's not likely that Ukraine will receive NATO membership. And U.S. leaders had meetings with Russian leaders about the war in Ukraine without Ukraine present. Now, Ukraine and Zelensky have remained adamant that any conversations about Ukraine without Ukraine will not be successful. So today is a day to address a lot of this back and forth, whether that's in front of the cameras or during their private lunch. We expect to happen in the middle of those meetings.
And finally, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer was there yesterday. The French president was there earlier this week. They're all crediting the U.S. president for bringing the possibility of a peace deal. Clearly, the Trump White House wants to ensure a speedy end to this war. The question is, why are they in such a hurry?
Busy week here at the White House for sure. European leaders have been rushing to Washington, especially with Trump's recent comments about the war in Ukraine and his interactions with Russia about the war in Ukraine. When Starmer arrived yesterday, cameras saw him greet Trump greet him, as he welcomed him here. And someone shouted the question, are you confident that there will be a peace agreement, that you'll come to a peace agreement? And Trump confidently said, we can, we will. Now, of course, that does still remain to be seen. And the big question today, again, is will Zelensky be able to get some of those security guarantees? During a cabinet meeting earlier this week, Trump dismissed the idea of robust security guarantees for Ukraine.
All right, Julia Brenbrook, live for us tonight from the White House. Thank you very much for joining us here on CNN News 18.
Think of it, a modestly successful comedian. President Zelensky talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go into a war that basically couldn't be won, that never had to start and never would have started if I was president, not even a chance, and it didn't start for 4 years. He refuses to have elections, is low in the real Ukrainian polls. I mean, how can you be high with every city is being demolished? It's hard to be high. Somebody said, oh no, his polls are good, give me a break. Every city is being demolished. They look like a demolition site, every single one of them. And the only thing he was really good at was playing Joe Biden like a fiddle. He played him like a fiddle. That's an expression we use, Yasser, to say that he's pretty easy. Something I'll admit that only Trump is going to be able to do in the Trump administration. We're going to be able to do it. I think Putin even admitted that. Biden never tried. Europe has failed to bring peace, and Zelensky probably wants to keep the gravy train going. I don't know what's the problem, but he hasn't been able. He's very upset that he wasn't invited. He could have come if he wanted to, but that he wasn't invited to Saudi Arabia. But he's been working for 3 years. There's never been even meetings or phone calls to stop this war. It's a horrible thing. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered, and millions of people have unnecessarily died. And you can't bring a war to an end if you don't talk to both sides. You got to talk. They haven't been talking for 3 years.
Mr. President, you talked about having common ground with Keir Starmer, but there are things you disagree on as well. You described Zelensky as a dictator. He describes President Putin as a dictator. Do you see that as a problem?
The relationship between President Zelensky and President Putin is not a good one. You've noticed, right? It's not a good one. It's not a good relationship. And we're going to have to try and work something out. Sometimes that happens. I get along with both. I have a very good relationship with President Putin. I think I have a very good relationship with President Zelensky. And now we're doing the deal, and we're going to be in there. We're going to be actually in there and digging our hearts out. And hopefully, we need the rare earth, and we have some here, but we don't have enough. Our economy is very strong, and we need a lot of things that in some cases we don't have here. So I think we're going to have a very good relationship, but the relationship between them is not the best.
Mr. President, do you still think that Mr. Zelensky is a dictator?
Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question.
Viewers, The Congress party has wasted no opportunity over the years to pass judgment over Hindu customs. The Gandhis, over the last 10 to 15 years, have allowed their allies to heap insult on Hinduism, to compare the creed to abhorrent diseases, to ridicule Hindu texts and caricature Hindu deities in offensive light, to even stand in the way of Hindus reclaiming their religious place of worship. The Congress has presided over a legally sanctioned loot of Hindu temples by continuing with the HR&CE Act, even when it's been in power, and even when Hindus have petitioned it to cancel this act, to scrap it. The Congress has even boycotted some of the defining moments of Hindu cultural pride. But giving very little to the faith, discriminating against the faith, doing virtually nothing for the faith, hasn't stopped the Congress party from still seeking to exploit the tolerant nature of Hindus. Viewers, I'm going to now tell you about an instance that has come to light over the last 48 hours. And this only underlines the point I'm making. In what can only be described as a highway robbery of Hindu assets, the Congress government in Himachal Pradesh is now ordering temples to fund its freebie schemes. Yes, viewers, to fund its freebie schemes, the schemes it has promised to woo voters and further its political interests. It wants Hindu temples to fund them. Viewers, why are these things? Ask mosques if they are so inclined to contribute, or church organizations. But I'm getting ahead of myself, viewers. If you don't believe what I'm telling you, I'm going to quote straight out of the government order, which is called on Hindu temples to fund a very important Congress so-called relief measure. Here it is, the diktat in black and white, and it's on your screens. It says, various temple trusts functioning under Himachal Pradesh Hindu Public Religious Institution Charitable Endowment Act keep making contributions for charitable activities and welfare schemes run by the state government. They may make contributions towards Mukhya Mantri Sukh Ashray and Mukhya Mantri Sukh Shiksha Yojana to provide funds for welfare schemes. Contributions must first be passed by the temple trust and in strict adherence to laws governing the trust, unquote. Now, what has brought the Congress to the door of Hindu temples is the ruinous policies it has adopted, viewers. The Prime Minister has in fact warned Hindus that the day would come when the Congress would take